a very distinguished career in the diplomatic ministry of Indonesia, and his diplomatic stints include Deputy Chief of Mission to London, UK, Minister Counselor, Coordinator of Political Affairs to Washington, DC. To formally commence the event, I request Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua, Acting President IPRI, for his introductory remarks.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Togyo, Ambassador Durrani, Dr. Hussain Nadeem, and distinguished visitors, I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir, yet again on Islamabad Policy Research Institute's distinguished lecture series. And let me acknowledge right at the outset that Ambassador Togyo is one of the most vibrant member of this diplomatic community. And we have always found him too effusive to interact with the think tanks and academia, which indicates his keen interest in intellectual and diplomatic interactions. And I can assure you, sir, that this is one of those series of distinguished lecture series, which equips us with a lot of insight and the latest knowledge and about what is happening in the world, especially coming from the experts. This comes in very handy for our researchers, and this fosters a unique bond between academia and the policymakers that IPRI is under its new reforms package endeavoring ever since we have embarked on this path. Indonesia, as you know, today's topic of discourse is economics, and Indonesia is one of the shining examples amongst the members of OIC community. This is a country which has seen its roller coaster ride to the present crest, wherein it has outperformed Indian economy, and amongst the G20 countries, it's now number 2 behind China. So that takes some doing. We take justifiable pride in Indonesian example because of so many similarities between the two countries. So Pakistan is a country with a lot of diversity and pluralism, and the languages and ethnic diversity that is there in Indonesia is also in Pakistan, and there are so many examples that we can relate to. Now, we all know the figures and the data that in purchasing power parity wise, it's 15th global economy, and nominal GDP wise, it is now 7th. And we have learned that they are planning to be the 4th largest economy in near future. So this gives us a lot of interest and hope into Indonesian example, especially after the reforms era. The kind of resilience Indonesia has shown to overcome the Asian economic crisis, and in 2004, 2007, each time it has come out stronger, and therein lies some lessons for us, and we would like to be educated by Ambassador Togyo on all those aspects. And I'm sure after this session we'll be very wiser on in not only Indonesian economy, but its aspects which have led to this economic miracle, so to speak. So with these 2 words, I request Ambassador Togyo to come and give his discourse. Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me first acknowledge Honorable Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua and good friend, my good friends, Ambassadors Durrani, also Brigadier Hamid and Dr. Hussain Nadeem. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and also ladies and gentlemen, certainly. Assalamualaikum once again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to, to have a chance to get in close cooperations with the IPRI, with these institutions, and I always, treasures my friendship with people from think tank or from the university, like others, diplomatic community here in Pakistan. And I also would like to thank Brigadier Janjua for his kind word, addressed to me. When I first landed in Pakistan, I was first impressed not only by the greening of Islamabad in particular, which you have one of the biggest and beautiful green area as big as Hyde Park and Central Park in Fatima Jinnah Park. But a part of that I learned it's very interesting things that Islamabad actually serve as the mini capital of think tank. This is what I learned when I compare Islamabad with the Washington DC and London, where I had a fortune to to be posted there. One thing that I learned that there are many think tank. There's many an expert in Islamabad who devote their energies in helping the government institution, in helping the business community, focusing on one or two areas of the interest. So I'm really glad that I've been posting in these beautiful countries with with people who are very generous and hospitable, especially toward the Muslim brother and sister like Indonesia. So with that introductions, I would like to highlight some of the important policies of the Indonesian government and why the two countries also have a lot of the opportunity in trying to expand further the bilateral relations. Let me start with with the historical background. Indra, can you help me, Pak Indra, to the slide? Yeah, the first slide. Alhamdulillah, the two countries have a solid, foundations. We have a solid foundations in terms of bilateral relations since the early inceptions of our bilateral relations. And I think, the two founding fathers, they have a very close relations. And in fact, not only that, we attach great importance of Pakistan's. It can be, it can be seen by the fact that all of the Indonesian presidents have visited Pakistan except one president, President Habibie. So from President Sukarno and the incumbent now, President Joko Widodo, all have been traveling to Islamabad, meeting their counterpart here. So this is, I think, is one of the important example of how we attach great importance of Pakistan's in our bilateral relations. Not because we are the same, Muslim countries, which is very which become the biggest and the second most populous countries, but I think we share a lot in common in terms of the promoting multilateralisms, contributing more in global peace and security. Because if we are talking nowadays about the foreign policy, it is no longer sufficient. We are promoting the foreign policies only for achieving our national interests. Whatever vague the concept is, but the second important elements with the two countries also is working together in different formats is promoting peace and security, peace and stability, and promoting the betterments of world in terms of the social economics betterment. So I think in those two particular objectives, the two countries, we work together in different forum, be it through bilaterally and multilaterally in once again helping to have betterments in the world. And I think next slide provides you the mechanisms why the two countries then have a very good relationship, because I think in terms of our collaborations from you name it, from political, the security and trade, including the social, the economic, we have a solid foundation for bilateral mechanism. We have a mechanism that already in place. On the political sciences, we have the political plannings dialogue or bilateral consultations forums. And in defense, we have a joint defense community already encompassing all services. And also in economies, we also have a preferential trade agreement, 2013. Social cultures, there is numerous social MOUs between the University of Indonesia and that of in Pakistan. So let's provide a strong foundations for expanding further the bilateral economy. But one thing that, still, I think is a homework for us. We need to have a more structured engagements at the highest level. This is something that we think still missing at the times, because usually the ministers, foreign ministers, or the presidents, they're meeting and on the margins of the UN, for instance, or on the margins of one of the important gathering like the OICs. But we need to have a more structural, a framework to allow the leaders of the two countries at the ministerial level to sit together, to discuss together, to once again make, give guidance for us how the two countries would be able once again to expand for the bilateral relations. Ambassador Duran is being, also the one that involved in diplomatic relations, certainly knows the importance of having a more structured relationships between the two countries, between Pakistan and their counterpart. So this is something that now we also in the process of encouraging to have this kind of mechanism. Now I turn to the economic relations, which I think is more relevant because it's themed for today's discussions. Indonesian economy in Pakistan enjoy very good relations in terms of the economy. We have the preferential trade agreement 2013. Before the agreement was adopted, our trade probably around 1.5 billion US dollar annually. And then we realized we need to expand this trade. We need to include more trade goods, in the bilateral relations. So we agreed to adopt what we call the preferential trade agreement in 2013. And it tends to be the correct approach taken by the two governments, because with the adoptions of the PTA, the bilateral trade, grows double. Nowadays we enjoy 2.5 to 0.6. Even at the peak, in 5 years ago, it reached almost 3 billion US dollars. So we see, the importance of having trade relationship between Indonesia and Pakistan through the bilateral, arrangements like preferential trade agreement. In this trade agreement, there are 300 somethings good from Pakistanis are on the list to enjoy as very minimum or zero taxes. In Indonesia also we enjoyed like 200 items on the list of the PTA. Now we are planning to expand it further, because nowadays I think we receive a lot of suggestions from this different sector of our economy that this a product should be included in the list of the PTA to enjoy once again the maximum benefit of having trade relationship between the two countries. So now we are working toward what we call it trade agreements in goods, TIG agreement. So we are now working in the process of negotiating the TIG, which hopefully would pave the way once again as a stepping stone toward the adoptions of the FTA between Indonesia and Pakistan. So now the two countries already undertook two rounds of negotiations on the TRIPS in goods agreement. We hope that next year we would be able to complete this trade agreement. Now, in terms of trade, the next slide, these slides provide you a good sense how the two countries have a trade. We, Indonesia, enjoy a surplus. This is one of the challenges that we are facing today. I learned we need more to do. We need more in trying to narrowing the gap, between trade of the two countries. Now, the two challenges that we're facing nowadays. One, in narrowing this gap, we need to diversify goods, because the challenges for the government, the challenges among developing countries, because most of the products or most of the products are not complementary each other. So to some extent, it would competing each other in domestic markets. So, but when we learn this and we compare how other countries succeeded in promoting their economy, we come to some conclusions that there are paths for Indonesia and Pakistan that needs to work together. We can work together in overcoming these obstacles if we are narrowing to certain area whereby the two countries have comparative advantage of the industries, and the other countries, for instance, have the raw materials. So we then, we would be able to work together in trying to, once again, to get the maximum benefit of bilateral trade. I'll touch upon those on my next slide. Ambassador Sudani and the Brigadier Wali Janjua mentions about the Indonesian's potentials of economy. There's a lot of research that indicate that we have the potentials of to become probably top 10 of the biggest economy in the next 20 years. But I think it is not the Indonesia alone. Many countries like Pakistan also have the potentials. Why? Because Indonesia and Pakistan have a big market. So the population, to some extent, serve as a good resources for Indonesia and Pakistan to become a biggest economy. I'll show you later on. But there's a lot of accolade attached to Indonesia by some of the experts. We become, hopefully, we would become the top 5 global economy in the 2050s. 2045. This is one of the aspirations by President Jokowi. Once we enjoy a centennial, celebration, that we would be able, hopefully, Indonesia would be able to become a top 5 global economy. Now, why? I think some of the success of the Indonesian economy, I think, is because of the prudence and the economic policies being adopted by the Indonesian government. I think we are lucky because we have the right man on the right. We have the right persons on the right positions. That was in Indonesia. We have, for instance, one of the best financial ministers, not only the Asia Pacific but also in the world. Is Madam Sri Mulyani, who happened to be previously served as one of the directors in the IMF. Now she's also serving the second terms of the cabinet of President Jokowi as once again the ministers of finance. He helped, especially today during the crisis. She played important roles in helping the government to focus on the area whereby the government need to put a lot of exercise or a lot of energies in securing, a domestic, a market, and also reviving, a little bit, domestic market, which now encountering some problem because of the COVID. We are facing unprecedented, challenges due to the COVID, and I guess Indonesia is not alone. Many countries also facing similar challenges because the COVID, they stopped the global economy. For the first time in the 20th centuries, we also experienced, recessions in last years. But Alhamdulillah, with the strategies being implemented by the government of Indonesia, now we are rebounding. The economy is rebounding, and we are now enjoying 3% of the growth of the economy, which hopefully by next year would become close to the period before pandemic to 5% of the economic growth. So this is the expectations. But one thing that the governments of Indonesia, the policies of the government of Indonesia during the COVID, challenges, we are once again, focusing to help, the health public sector. This is something that I think, like Pakistan, Indonesia has also put a lot of a budget to support the global, sorry, the health, the public health in Indonesia. I think we learned during the pandemic that the global world is not ready to overcome this pandemic at this scale. So there's a lot of, for instance, in the earliest month or the earliest period of the pandemic, whereby we facing the shortage of not only raw materials for the medical supplies, but also even for the masks at that times, we're facing difficulties in providing this mask. Let alone, the vaccines, because at that time there was early stage of, experiment, a trial process. So the government then, give a focus to help the health public sectors by once again allocating a big, amount, close to, I guess, like 49 or close to 50 billion US dollars only for the, the policies to address these COVID challenges. The second, policies that we also, encourage to give additional incentive for the small scale industries, and also, providing a social security net for people who lost their job because of the COVID. So to some extent, I believe Pakistani government is also, implementing, similar approach by, if I'm mistaken, a hush a policy. So, this is one of the area whereby, the government of Indonesia is also promoting, give incentive for, small scale industry, in addition to also providing social safety net for, people. Now, I want to, invite you to go beyond Indonesia, because if you are talking about Indonesia and Pakistan, you have to look at, ASEAN as a big market. This is some things that, we encourage, friends in Pakistan to look at Indonesia's beyond Indonesia, because in the end, Indonesia is only a small part of countries in the region in Asia. So why this is important? Because the trade between Pakistan and ASEAN, annually, we only have like 7 to 8, billion annually trade between Pakistan and ASEAN. This is very trivial. The number is very small, especially if you compare, for instance, ASEAN's trade with China, for instance, it's 100 times, close to 700 billion US dollars, meaning there's a lot of huge potentials between ASEAN and Pakistan. If you take it into considerations nowadays, Pakistan, for instance, you enjoy the FTA with China, but to some extent, you also have a benefit to, to produce, if Pakistan can become the global supply chains of the biggest industry of China, then it would allow Pakistans to also, explore the market of ASEAN. Not only ASEAN, I believe, because, this is some things that, China's, they also have various FTAs with countries around the globe. In addition to also Pakistan's individual countries, that Pakistan also have the FTA with other countries. So this is why we want to invite, people in Pakistan, business leaders, business community, and also the university and thinking to look at to the East. Many studies already indicate that the future economy relies on the East. The East centuries. Some people probably call it, some scientists, the pundit, they might say, the future economy relies on the East. Because if you look at the East Asia, you see not only Japan. Previously, we have a Japan, which, with the flying disc theories, then, it bring along Taiwan, it bring along the China, South Korea, and now there's countries like Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, and other the ASEAN countries. So those are the potential for the future economy. you know. But if you look at this is some things that, you know, I keep mentioning to, you know, on my, you know, during my discussions with Brigadier Janjua or Ambassador Durrani. I think Pakistani need also to look at to the East. You know, you have a vision East policies, but this is some things that need more to be done in trying once again to seize the momentums of the, you know, the global economy shifting to the East of Asia. And in this regard, the IPR, I believe, could play important roles by having, you know, initiating some studies on this Asia, you know, policies. Because in the end, you know, I think not only Pakistan, because other countries also, they also look at the East in trying to improve their economy. Why shifting in the Asia, and why Pakistan is also important in this regard? If you look at the data provided there, you see, you know, based on the some of the estimations that, you know, Pakistan also will make a leapfrog of the economic developments from, you know, in terms of the GDP rank. You know, in 2040, Pakistan is also expected to, you know, to be in the 23rd, you know, as compared to 39 in today's GDP rank. So once again, why this is important for Pakistan? Because you have a very huge population, huge market, not only huge market, but also skillful, you know, talented and skillful resources, human resources, let alone the natural resources that Pakistanis also have. So the human resources, for instance, the online index, you know, if you look at the online index labor, you know, being developed by Oxford University, you see 3 countries in the South Asia, actually they already occupied more than 42% of the global, you know, e-trade, you know, developing, you know, labor-related industries. You know, countries in the South Asia, you know, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, they are all, you know, occupying very big chunks of labor relating to, you know, e-commerce or, you know, development, internet development industry. So I think this is one of the important, you know, foundations also for Pakistan. And I guess, in fact, nowadays with the infrastructures, with the improvement of infrastructures, the connectivities of ASEAN, the connectivity of Pakistan's also become one of the important, you know, element, which, you know, I myself keep mentioning to my counterpart in Indonesia. Go to Pakistan to look at, to invest in Pakistan, because with the Gwadar, you know, with the newly infrastructures being developed by the government, you see this easiest way to go to connect to the, you know, landlocked countries in Central Asia through, you know, Pakistan, instead of through other area, because from Gwadar they can just straight ahead to the Central Asia. And not only that, even to the western part of China, it is easiest to go through Pakistan nowadays rather than through Beijing, because if you look at, you know, the distance, for instance, probably it is easy, you know, for the investors, you know, once again, to look at the Pakistan beyond Pakistan. So this message that, you know, which I believe, you know, corresponds with, you know, ASEAN, Indonesia, and Pakistan. The geo-economic policies being promoted by the government, it is, I guess, the same with what we have been, you know, undertaken in Indonesia or in Pakistan. We also promoting geo-economy in the region. Connectivity is also one of the, you know, a pillar for the ASEAN. Even ASEAN has a program, ASEAN connectivities in 2030, because we see, you know, connectivity is very important to allow people, to allow the mobility, not only mobility of people, but also the mobility of goods, and in the end, the mobilities of the capital. So, shifting to the East Asia, I think this is very important for the Pakistanis to look at. While for Indonesia and ASEAN, we also, send the same message. Look at Pakistan beyond Pakistan, because Pakistans have a lot of potentials. How we are going to do that? I think there are some that needs to be taken into consideration in this regard. Okay, now let me look at the next slide. I think some of the consequences of the shifting of ASEAN, you see one of the issues because of interdependencies nowadays become more prevalent. Nowadays people, they cannot live in isolations. The option for the isolation is, is very bad, because, it doesn't help, the economy of your nations, and also it doesn't help, the people. So now, in interdependencies means that it requires people to be more vigilant in expanding their networking, not only between states but also with other stakeholder. Diplomacies, the economic diplomacies now has become very important. I guess Indonesia in last 10 years, we put one of the priority for diplomat is the economic diplomacy. And I think even nowadays, my governments in Jakarta, they monitor every ambassadors, how, in terms of how they, be able to expand, the Indonesian's market to Pakistan's, how, the two countries, in terms of the trade, develop further. But I learned Pakistan's also nowadays, they put the economic diplomacy as the priority. I learned from the newspaper, the foreign minister Qureshi also mentioned, the importance of the economic diplomacy. And I happened to met with, the young juniors diplomat in one of my meetings in the Islamabad Chamber of Commerce. They met with the presidents of the ICCI, met with, I learned that, they met also different, the economic stakeholder in Pakistan, because nowadays the economic diplomacy has become very, very important, for the countries. Now, with that, what usually the embassies do in terms to promote the economic diplomacy, or in conducting the economic diplomacies, we also make an outreach, for instance, meetings with different stakeholders in the recipients countries. We also doing some market intelligence, working together with think tank, working together with the expert on the field to get to pick their brain, to get some idea from them what would be the area that they see provide a lot of opportunity for the countries, for the two countries. Now, facilitating trade, trade investments is also becoming very important. In addition to certainly the image building, because nowadays also image building also becomes very important. Now, I mentioned to you, the key success for the East Asia economy, I think, relies on the two facts. One, trade liberalizations, whereby we keep open our countries for trade, for international trade. We're relaxing our, our regulations in trying to invite more investors to come to Indonesia. But Indonesia is not alone. Many countries doing the same. Pakistan nowadays also made very significant, improvement in terms of inviting, investor. Look at the ease of doing business of Pakistan, which I believe also, increase based on the finding of, World Bank. This is something that we keep promoting. And in fact, if you look at China, before they joined WTO nowadays, you see, this is, I think, because of the trade liberalization. Because this is because of they open their trade for the foreign investors, for the engagements with the foreign, counterpart, and you will see the booming of the economy. Now, that's one of the key success for the, of the countries in the Asia, especially on the East Asia, embracing the globalization. I know globalization is not, a panacea to solve any, problems, especially the social problems, because I understand that a lot of resentment also on the, globalizations of a growing trade, trade liberalization. In the last 4 years, we see globally how, resentment against the globalizations. But I think with the WTO, with the FTA, it is a testament that state need once again to embrace, trade liberalizations in order to reap the benefits of the global economy. And second thing, pragmatism. Pragmatism is also the key. Pragmatism is the key. Look at, for instance, Indonesia also, we are being pragmatic. We cut our diplomatic relations with China in one time. But, we fully aware that, the two countries cannot, live separately, because in the end, it is for the benefit of the countries to have, a closer relationship, to have a trade. Vietnam's and the US, for instance, Vietnam suffered a lot during the Vietnam Wars, but they are pragmatic enough to choose trade with the US. The challenge for countries in East Asia, and how to balancing those pragmatisms and the trade liberalizations. Now, next slide. I think can you skip this? I think in terms of the Pakistan and ASEAN, I think once again we provide. Pakistan's already a sectoral dialogue partner of ASEAN, so there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of foundation for the two countries to works together. And I apologize that slide doesn't reflect those. But next slide, please. The RCEP, the ASEAN. Next slide. ASEAN's already adopt the RCEP. RCEP is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership concluded between ASEAN and I guess 5 trading partners: Australia, New Zealand, China, Korea, Japan. So with RCEP, you see this is a huge market, 2.3 billion market, equal to 30% of the world populations. Huge market for the ASEAN. This is what we call it, the potential for ASEAN, for trade, because ASEAN have expanded their collaboration in trade with other countries, 5 biggest countries in Asia. And it is also very interesting if you look at the composition, because some countries in the RCEP are advanced countries like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. They already advanced their economy, but the rest is developing countries. Even China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, they're all developing countries. So this is a good combination whereby then developed and developing countries can work together in promoting the global economy. The total market revenue is very huge, more than 400 billions by 2025. So this once again it's very huge, with also a total GDP around 38.8 billion, or 30% of the global GDP. Now the RCEP will be enter into force, hopefully in very short future. So once it enter into force, that it will provide a benefit, for the countries will be part of it. But I guess in the global economy, it is not only the parties, because in the end, in the FTA, for instance, there was also the third possibilities of the third parties to get benefit of this, using the rule of origins, concept. So now in terms of the Indonesia, Pakistan, and Pakistan, ASEAN, what would be the area for potential economic cooperation? I listing some of the important elements which I think worth researching further. First, look at the complementarity product. both needs to work together to identify what the area whereby Pakistan, Indonesia, Pakistan, ASEAN have the complementarity, similarities, this is a challenge, not only Pakistan, Indonesia, or Pakistan, ASEAN, because being developing countries, usually we produce the same goods. But look at the complementarity product. One thing that, for instance, Pakistan's one of the biggest textile producers, right? But the raw materials may come from Indonesia, like yarn, polyesters, because, Indonesia produce one of the biggest producer of polyesters. By the time I'm speaking here, I was contacted by one of the, exporter from Pakistan who wants to get, in close cooperations with their counterpart in Indonesia. Simultaneously, they also wants to import some of the polyester from Indonesia because it is needed for textile industry. So that's a complementarity product, which I think could provide a benefit for the two countries. The second, focusing on the industries that are having comparative advantage. Once again, I already mentioned about the textiles, but textiles is one of the area. The other areas, the leather, productions, which Pakistan's also have a comparative advantage. I went to Sialkot a few months ago, and I visited one of the factories who produce football. Pakistan is probably, not at the state in terms of the football. Indonesia or Pakistan, we still far beyond, Argentine or Brazilian teams. But at least Pakistan, every 4 years, you also participate in the World Cup with the presence of the football made in Pakistan. So I think this is one of the area, because to some extent Indonesia also provide a textile as a raw material. Now the third strategy is also be part of a global supply chain. Now what is important today is to become a global supply chain. I think the most pragmatic ways to do that, focusing on the product of China, because nowadays the product of China is everywhere. Probably previously 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if we have some, a gadget, or if we have some computer made in China, we tend to put, tip X, or we tend to, to cover it up, because we don't want people see, to see that we have a product made in China. But nowadays they produce many sophisticated, technological advance, computer gadget and everything. So now even, product made in China has become one of the excellent, product in terms of the electric, gadget, for instance. And I'm very pleased to learn that this is Xiaomi, if I'm mistaken, they will open, the, manufactured production in Pakistan. So if Pakistan can be part of the global supply chains of China, it will allow Pakistan to export the product beyond China, because China have the FTA with Asia, with Indonesia, with many countries in the world. So the strategy of being, be part of a global supply chains, actually the strategy that, probably, people during, when they study the economy, probably it reminds them on the flying G's theory. You concentrate on the area of, of production whereby you have the comparative advantage, and then, bit by bit, you will have the opportunity to expand your market. And others certainly, signing the FTA, because in the end, FTA provide the opportunity to expand trade by lowering tariff. And that's, I think, hopefully I already, touch upon some of the important aspect within 45 minutes. And certainly I open for discussions. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, His Excellency, for this insightful session. We now open the floor for question answer. So Osama, you can go first. Abdullah, if you can kindly pass on the mic to him.
We'll take another question, and yeah, if you could go next.
Okay, another question, please.
Well, thank you so very much for the questions. All of very tough questions. I guess I think that the second and the third questions, I think to some extent it's relate on the issues of rivalries between the U.S. and China and how it might impact the regions. So let me address those issues first before addressing the issue of the economy. Now, I think this is one of the challenges. Not only facing not only the ASEAN who face this the challenges. The global rivalries between China and the U.S. I think we can also feel the tailwind, for instance, in these regions and in many part of the region. Now, ASEAN, Indonesia keeps saying that, I guess not only Indonesia's, but countries in the ASEAN, we have a very close relationship with, the two countries, with the US and also with the China. If you look at, for instance, the trade relationship between China and individual countries of ASEAN, you see China actually on the, I guess, best three of the trade. Even for Indonesia, China is also one of the best three. Not only with Indonesia, also with Vietnam, with Malaysia. So in terms of the trade, China is the biggest trading partner of many countries in the ASEAN. And on the other hand, if you look at the investment, the U.S. investment usually among the top three in various countries in ASEAN. Green tea would be fine. Thank you. Now, so with those, we attach great importance of both, China, and also the U.S. So we keep mentioning is don't force us to choose, between China and the U.S. because both are very important, partner, for the ASEAN. That's why. But at the same time, we also reminding them we don't want to see rivalries, in the region. Why not, working together for the prosperity of the regions? Because I think we enjoy the ASEAN, for instance, enjoyed, the economic growth because of the stability we enjoyed in the last 20, 30 years. So don't make some things that destabilizing the regions, because in the end it would give negative impact for the economy of the region. So the ASEANs then we adopt the Indo-Pacific Outlook, which actually emphasizing the importance of collaboration between the countries in the regions, between the superpower in the region. Not only the underscoring the importance of a partnership, but also we underscore the importance of respecting territorial integrities of the countries in the region, and at the same time also refraining from actions that could interfere domestic politics of the countries and regions. So the Indo-Pacific Outlook provide what we call it a guiding principle for the countries in the region, ASEAN, and also, our partners like the US and China, how they interact within the countries and also beyond the countries, because the guiding principle is there, non-peaceful uses of non-peaceful uses of forces, respecting of the territorial integrity, non-interference of the domestic issues. Those are the key principles which actually we don't invent this from out of the blue, because those actually the guideline from the UN charter. Those are the principles which guide the international community when they interact with each other. So what the message is, we want to emphasize once again, why not working together for the benefits of betterments of the people in the regions? Because the ASEAN countries, we enjoy this the economic we enjoy the economic growth because of the stabilities that we enjoyed in the last 30 years. So that's the I think those responding also relating with the issues of the AUKUS, because in the end that's actually the essence. Some countries of the ASEAN might be expressing their strong opinions, but in the end if you look at the right line, it's quite the same. We emphasizing the important message of the Indo-Pacific Outlook. Now on the issues of the economy, I think the first strategy being developed by the Indonesian government when we develop the economy, the import substitutions. I think this is the textbook thinking. The same, Indonesia is also improving, their economy by introducing the import substitutions. We give incentive for domestic production if they produce good that could, supplements or substitute the import. So this is some things that we encourage, but in the end, simultaneously we also relaxing regulations to invite the investor. Like the Pakistani governments nowadays, you introduce the special economic zone. This is also we invent in probably in the last 40 years when we invite foreign investors to come to Indonesia. If you read the memoir of Deng Xiaoping, it's very interesting because I remember one time he met with Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. Then the Prime Minister at the time, Deng Xiaoping asked Lee Kuan Yew, what kind of the recipe for the success of Singapore? And Prime Minister refers to one of the special economic zone in Batam, in Indonesia, which is actually across the sea. So to some extent, then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew advised Deng Xiaoping, why not developing this kind of specific special economic zone? And that's what happened. Deng Xiaoping then adopt these policies, developing this special economic zone. But if you look at today's the map of special economic zone in China, they have more than Indonesia. They have probably tens in spreading over countries. But why I mention this, because I think the import substitutions should also be complemented by the relaxing regulations in inviting potential investors, because in the end they will bring not only the capitals but also they bring also know-how. Transfer of knowledge will come to that, and with that then countries can make specialize on one of the key areas whereby they have the comparative advantage and leave other part to different countries, like a flying disc theory. When you first you don't need now to manufacture the whole car, producing a whole car like Hyundai or Toyota, but now you can focusing on producing one of particular part, Mabel, for instance, or the spare part. If you're focusing on the spare part, then you can also export the spare part to the global world. So this is the flying theories which actually become materializing in this East Asia, because once again, in addition to the import substitutes, we invite them also to invest with establishing special economic zone, because in a special economic zone like in Pakistan, the foreign investors enjoy zero tax for certain years. Well, this is probably people might criticizing, because what would be the benefit for the countries if there is no tax for 5 or 10 years? But look at beyond that, because in the end it will give additional benefit to the countries to improve their economy, because they will know the technological side, technological know-how to produce something, and this is one of the strategies whereby the Indonesian government in the last 40 years trying also to implement. And I guess Indonesia and Pakistan, we have a huge market, and I understand that people like Indonesia, many of the manufacturers industry, they also tend to focus on domestic market, because they see why we exploit the other market, why we export other market if we have a lot market domestically. I think this is something that we then, reminding them, we need the foreign exchange, our devisa need foreign exchange. So we need, certainly you have to focus on domestic market, but at the same time also you have to expand it beyond national border, because with that then we will get the benefit of foreign exchange. Thank you.
We'll take one last question from the audience.
Any more questions?
So Ambassador Durrani wants to ask one.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Really very illuminating discourse. And I wondered, with regard to, I'm more intrigued about, you have partially answered about the office. But the issue is, and you have rightly pointed out, that ASEAN has attained stability by focusing more on economic cooperation than, say, living in the mindset and live with their political disputes, which earlier the ASEAN members had. So you have attained this stability, and you have rightly pointed out that your advice to China and America is not to disturb this stability, which is a win-win for all the concerned. Having said that, still, the tensions are there. And in that respect, not only Indonesia, but I think, and I expect, I think that ASEAN as a group would also adopt a common strategy with regard to these new alliances which are emerging, not only AUKUS, but also Quad, and then Indo-Pacific partnership. So if you can enlighten us on that, because these are very, important questions, and those have an impact here in South Asia, including Pakistan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Durrani, for the questions. I think one of the very important aspect for the ASEAN's collaborations, not only within, amongst members of the ASEAN, but also with our counterpart, is having a dialogue, having a regular dialogue. So we provide a lot of avenue for, ASEAN and our dialogue partners, whereby, China and also the US also part of it. And people might criticize, ASEAN, because if you look at the framework that we have, the RRF, the IDM for the defense, for the economy, it's like a spaghetti ball. There's a lot of myriad of regional institutions established by the ASEAN. And in fact, if you look at today's the numbers of meeting in ASEAN, more than 1,500, and a year. So it is very Herculean task for the countries, of the ASEAN, meaning it's like more than 3 meetings on daily basis. But I think the good things about this dialogue, because with dialogue, with the regular dialogue, it would avoid, certainly first, it would address misunderstanding. Because with the dialogue, then it would allow, people who have different interpretations, sit together, express their view, however bitter it is, but, it express their view to be, with then, other parties might hear the concerns and be prudent in taking, further action. So I think it's one of the key, probably, that help the ASEANs to, reduce the conflict. Because if you look at the global politics, that was the global politics. Once the superpower, the new emerging power come, and then it become a rivalry between them. What is important for us is to avoid that, the self-professing, prophecies of Thucydides, whereby those become, the superpower and the new emerging power, in clash. This is something that we need to avoid. And I think ASEANs then, provide a lot of avenue for them, inviting them to invite together in, or mechanisms. We have the IRF, we have the ADMM Plus, for the defense, and in addition to the annual meeting between ASEAN and the US, between ASEAN and China. So this allowing us to express our concerns. Because I think with that, then, while in reality, probably there are some policies being taken by superpowers, but if we once again mentioning the importance of reducing the tensions, avoiding misunderstanding, because, misunderstanding might lead to, unexpected situations, which is very difficult to to overcome if we are not we don't provide forum for countries in ASEAN and on dialogue manner. So dialogue once again is becoming very important, and dialogue on regular basis using the ASEAN's mechanism. So with that, hopefully we would be able to reduce the potentials of miscalculated actions, based on the misunderstanding. So that's the dialogue, which is very important. And I think another important elements also the informal gathering, because in every occasion, ASEAN also use the opportunity, for instance, on the margins of the UN General Assembly, annual meeting in New York. We also organize meeting, informal meeting, with not only among ASEANs also, but also with our our partner, with the US, with the China. We have informal gatherings also with them. And sometimes some countries in some capitals, the ASEANs also organize very informal functions like a golf outing with their partner, because in the end most of the important decisions usually is also will be sent through informal gathering. Through informal gatherings we send the message. Then in the informal setting, and with that, then it helped to diffuse the tensions. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. I would now request Brigadier Rashid.
Just a second, before we also have a question which you can enlighten. We know that Francis Fukuyama has a theory of trust, and there are many parallels between Indonesia and Pakistan. The high trust societies are those where creativity and individualism is given the premium, and the low trust societies are those where collectivism and regimentation, that is the norm. Like he says that China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, so those kind of countries are low trust societies. And United States, Japan, Australia, so those are kinds of high trust society. economic miracle of countries like Malaysia and Indonesia is also one of the examples for us that these societies are breaking the glass ceiling and going towards high trust kind of a thing. Then there was another Harvard theory that there is a correlation between political instability and economic growth. And we have been the victims, and we still are grappling with those issues like fiscal imbalance and balance of payment. What is your experience that you would like to share with us by way of Indonesia's reforms that it has transformed itself into a high trust society, and how it has achieved political stability, which has translated directly into economic development?
This is very tough questions. No wonder it posed by Brigadier Janjua, acting presidents of these institutions. Yeah, I think what we learned, we've been up and downs, in these difficult situations. Even if you Google the era, if you Google the Balkanizations of Indonesia, there were some predictions in 1998 whereby many already made predictions that Indonesia will disintegrate, because of there's a lot of ethnicities, groups. There is a lot of differences, people who have different opinion in Indonesia. But Alhamdulillah, we survived nowadays. And I think one of the key important element is democratic reforms in Indonesia. We launched democratic, reform following the resignation of President Suharto, allowing in Indonesia to see a flourishing of political party. We have today probably more than 10 political party in Indonesia, and I think in this situations, the democratic reforms, although it's probably noisy, because democracy is noisy. People may express their view different among each other. It's very noisy, but it channeled the expressions opinion of people who in making suggestions how to build betterment for Indonesia's future. So I think democratic process in Indonesia, we think it helped Indonesia. I remember at that time we were debating what would be the best democracies that fit Indonesia, whether we go to proportionality or other sectors, or the combinations like the one. But in the end, we select combinations like the one in Germany, probably because at the times our President Habibie was alumni from Germany. So we have like the proportionalities, but in combinations with a district portions. So a bit mathematical. There was like a threshold for the political party to be represented in the parliament. So but everyone can establish a political party. They can join political party can join the elections, but only the political party who pass the threshold. In Indonesia, initially we introduced 5% threshold, but nowadays become lower. I guess those who are political party who pass the the threshold then can be represented in the parliament. So yeah, the democratic process in Indonesia, however noisy, I believe this is the key that help Indonesia to transform our economy. And I guess we also have throughout the history of Indonesia, there was always a struggle between those who wants to put emphasis on how do you call it, like religions, to become in the forefront, and another sections nationalisms, which also wants to emphasize the nationalisms at the forefront. But in the end, like a mixture of it also survive in Indonesia's democratic reform. So if you look at the representatives, a political party, you will see some of those also have very strong religious foundations. But I must say that in the end the nationalisms prevails in Indonesia. So I think that's helped the democratic process also in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. I will now request Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua, Acting President IPRI, to present a note of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, for a very, very enlightening discourse. And I think we have achieved so much that I'm thinking of having subsequent sessions also with you.
Okay.
And I would request you to suggest few books on these, economic development, integration, and political reforms process of Indonesia, because we've got to learn a lot from Indonesia. And I'm sure there are so many complementarities that this cooperation, not only in diplomatic and political front, but on economic and cultural fronts, it needs to be strengthened further.
Thank you.
And we would like to interact with the think tank from Indonesia. And we are endeavoring our best. And I'm sure in future, we can not only do joint research, but also maybe we can exchange our researchers so as to learn from each other. So I, on behalf of Islamabad Policy Research Institute, extend a very, a vote of thanks to you, and thank you so much for having spared time from your very busy schedule to come and enlighten us on economic development and complementarities between both the countries. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so very much also for having me. Thank you.
So I could request you to please present memento to His Excellency.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thanks. Thank you.
These are some of the products, and one product is a product of your help to us.
Okay.
So we have put it in some shape, anthology, and this has the transcribed part of your speaker that you wrote.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we should give a couple of more copies. Maybe Ambassador would like to send it to the.
Okay,
Definitely.
sure. I will send this to the.
You can have another one.
Sure. We'll give you another.
Thank you. Thank you. Ambassadors to Philippines. The speaker, the general, Lieutenant General Agus. Yes, the Philippines.
All right. So it's a good news.
Thank you. Thank you. Once again, thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all for active participation. Please join in for the refreshments today.
Thank you. Have the tea.
Oh, already,